Hi, we're live today talking about the gallbladder, what it is, what happens when it goes wrong, why you should care about those things. I've got a few questions. I got some really good questions this week, actually. And it's funny because it feels like every time I do a topic like this, people come into the office, and I've had this conversation like 5 times over the course of the last week or so. So first of all, what is the gallbladder and what does it do? So I drew a little picture here, and you can see, so this is your liver, this big black thing, and your liver is actually what produces bile. And so bile is produced in the liver, and it enters something called the hepatic duct, and it goes into this little green thing that looks like a tree is your gallbladder. And I always describe it to people as like a little punching bag that kind of hangs off the liver. And what it does is it fills up with bile. And bile it's made out of cholesterol and bilirubin. And what it does is it breaks down and emulsifies fats. One of my favorite props for this is, have you seen that commercial where they take this Dawn dish soap and they spray it all over a greasy pan, and the grease just kind of drips away to where this Dawn dish soap is like a detergent or something to break down the fat? Well, that's what bile is. So you produce it in the liver. It comes in, enters the gallbladder, where it's stored and concentrated in the gallbladder. And so then when you need it, when you eat fat or your body's trying to break down something waxy or fatty in nature, then it leaves the gallbladder through something called the common bile duct, and it enters into the small intestines. And then it helps, as your food is being digested, it helps you break down and emulsify that. So why is that important? Well, if you don't have good gallbladder function, then when you eat foods with fat or like a greasy, fatty meal, you can feel terrible because you don't have what you need to be able to break down that fat. So another question is, why should I care about the gallbladder in relation to my hormones? How does the gallbladder affect your hormones? Well, hormones are made out of cholesterol. They're made out of, like, they're fatty and waxy. All of your sex hormones have a cholesterol component. That's what they're made out of. And so when you use these hormones and your body does what they do with these hormones, then you have to, as they're being used, you create metabolites or waste products, and they have to be broken down and cleared out by your liver. But in order to do that, you need this detergent to spray on those hormones to break them down so that your liver can excrete them. I have actually seen cases where someone is having hormonal symptoms that they are sure are hormonal in nature. They think they need the birth control pill or hormone replacement therapy to solve the problem. And really what's happening is that they don't have good gallbladder function, so they can't break down and clear these hormones. So they're building up, and maybe they're having hot flashes, or I've seen that, or some other things that they would have never in a million years thought, oh, it's my gallbladder causing my hot flashes. But they tried all the other things, and that's what you do in functional medicine. You go, well, why is this happening? And we found out, hey, the gallbladder is affecting this, and we solved that problem. And then the hot flashes go away. So what are gallstones? That was a question that I was asked. And so what gallstones are is they're little stones that form in the gallbladder. And here I don't have a black marker here, but I'll use this blue one. And you can get these little stones that form. The cholesterol and the bilirubin that's in the bile can actually turn into a stone. And so they're super common. A lot of people have stones in their gallbladder, and they're not a big deal until they get caught in this duct here. And that's when you can have trouble, and you're racing to the emergency room going, oh, I'm in so much pain. And they have that conversation with you of, hey, we're going to need to take out your gallbladder right now. This is an emergency situation. So sometimes those get so big that there's nothing you can do about it. And it is a true surgical emergency at that case. So what how can those gallstones affect your health? Well, really, they're only a problem if they get stuck in that duct and they become an obstruction, so that this whole thing doesn't work properly, and then it causes a lot of pain, and you end up needing to have your gallbladder removed. How do I know if I have a gallbladder problem? What are some of the symptoms of gallbladder issues? A couple of things that I see very often is people say, when I eat something greasy or with fat in it, I get really queasy, and my stomach is affected and I don't feel good. That's number one. And then number two is constipation is an issue too, because bile, this detergent that we got going on, it makes things slippery and kind of greases the whole thing down. And so when gallbladder function isn't what it should be, and this bile gets really thick and sludgy and nasty, and doesn't flow the way it should, then you can get constipated. So those are probably the two biggest ones. Is it possible to reverse this problem? So it depends. It's always a good time to look at where there are issues with your health that need improvement, and to start turning away and doing things to make yourself healthier. That is always a good idea. Now, if you have these huge stones in there, you're probably not going to do much about the ones that are already formed. But things like drinking enough water, things like eating a healthy anti-inflammatory diet, and eating good healthy fats, things like avocados, nuts, olive oils, coconut, those kinds of healthy fats, and staying away from the fried, like trans fats and rancid fats, like what's found in vegetable oil and seed oil and all that kind of stuff, is a great way to keep your gallbladder nice and healthy. The question was, is there anything natural I can do about that, say if I have gallstones? So if you have gallstones, you might have run across, if you're holistically minded and you've done search like on a gallbladder flush, where there's this potion you can drink. It's got a bunch of apple juice and olive oil in it. And what that's supposed to do is the apple juice is supposed to start breaking down those stones, and then the oil causes your gallbladder to really start spasming and spit out those stones. Well, if you have small stones, that will work. But if they're too big, you can actually cause an obstruction, and you can actually create a big emergency where those stones get lodged in the duct, because like we talked about before, that's when people come in and say, oh, you need your gallbladder removed. So I'm not a huge fan of that for that reason, because if you do have big stones, if you haven't done an image and measured the size of those stones, there is a certain size that will fit through that duct. And once they get bigger than that, they won't fit through that. So unless you have somebody that, has done that imaging and knows what they're doing, I am pretty hesitant I would be hesitant to recommend that. The other thing though is that a lot of times the problem isn't the stones. The problem is that the function is just this detergent, if you will, is just gunked up, and it's like sludgy and thick, and it's not spraying right and coming out, and it's not the right consistency. So that's where changing your diet and changing the fats you're eating can help a lot. And so can actually adding supplements with something called bile salts in them, because one of the things that is in this bile is, we talk about it being like a detergent, and it's those bile salts that do that. So if you're not producing a good amount of those bile salts, sometimes you come along and you supplementally use some of those, and those can be a game changer if you need that. And I usually determine if someone needs that by having a conversation with them. And then there's actually a value on a lab test. It's called alkaline phosphatase. It's actually a liver enzyme, but it will elevate functionally. We see an elevation with that when someone's gallbladder is maybe not doing exactly what it needs to do. So anytime I see an alkaline phosphatase level over 100, I'm having a conversation and asking someone some really specific pointed questions that lead me to know whether or not we need to do some gallbladder work. And that's actually part of most of my treatments involve reconditioning and repair of the liver, and the gallbladder is part of that too. So that's that was a question I had, was, is there a natural way to do anything about gallstones or treat the gallbladder? So two different scenarios and two different thoughts on that. So let's talk about, what if you've had your gallbladder removed? About half the people that I see that come to me have had their gallbladder removed. And so if you've had this removed, let's just say that that's been removed. And right now, the gallbladder is the go-between between the bile that's produced in the liver and the small intestines. So now that I have that gallbladder removed, instead of dripping bile into the gallbladder, storing it and concentrating it and having it squeezed out as needed, it drips continuously into the small intestines. So we don't have as much control over that. We can't concentrate it and use it as needed. So for some people, that's okay, because that constant drip of bile into the small intestines, their body learns how to live without the gallbladder, and that system takes over, and it's just fine. But a lot of people end up having a lot of problems on the other side of gallbladder surgery because that isn't working right. Because if you eat, say, a fatty, greasy meal, and you don't have a little bit of extra detergent to break that down, you get queasy and you have stomach pains and all that kind of stuff. Or on the flip side, if you're not, like, you're fasting or you're not eating regular intervals, you have all this bile, and it actually causes diarrhea, because it starts moving things through and irritates that stomach lining. You pull water into the intestines lining. You pull water in and you cause diarrhea. So I've seen a lot of people that after they had gallbladder surgery, their biggest complaint is, I am running to the bathroom like it's an emergency. It's like rectal incontinence. Like, I can't hold it. I have to get there. And that is really a serious, huge quality of life issue. So, how do we do that? We work on changing the diet. We eat smaller and more frequently throughout the day. We eat fat in moderation. So we're not eating like a huge fat bomb all at one time. Those bile salts that I was telling you about that help, actually, if you have sluggish bile and it's not working really well, those bile salts are almost a must for anybody who's had their gallbladder removed. I use a product. If you're following along, you can go to my link bio, and there's a online store, and there's a product in there called LV-GB. And what it means is liver and gallbladder support. And it has those bile salts that I was telling you about that help do this job now that the gallbladder is missing. And then also it has some liver support, because I like to support the liver. In most cases, someone needs some liver support alongside of these bile salts. And now, instead of having to use two products like I've always done in the past, this one is a good combination that does both of those, especially if the issue is hormonal and someone has some hormone problems and they're having trouble with liver clearance of hormones. We want to support the liver so that we can detox and get those metabolites out, but we also want to support the gallbladder so we can break them down and hand them over to the liver in a way that the liver can take out the trash on those hormone metabolites. So that's kind of a little discussion about what happens when you've had your gallbladder removed. And let's see, what else? What other questions? Do I have to give up all fried foods? You probably need to consider the amount of fat and the way you're eating it. Most people that have had their gallbladder removed just don't feel great eating fried food. And then the other question is, are fried foods good for anybody? Probably not. Are there some better choices? What can we do? Can we look at air frying things and just changing up what we're doing? Not just for the sake of the gallbladder, but for better general overall health. how about fad diets that will affect the gallbladder? One of the big ones right now I see is the keto diet. How many people are on the keto diet or a low carb diet? Almost everybody. Well, let me show you something about a low carb diet over here. Is you've got a pie, and when you go on a low carb diet, you have to increase your amount of fat and protein, because if you've got 100% of your calories are coming from 3 sources: fat, carbohydrate, and protein. If I make 50% of my diet fat, 25% carb, and 25% protein, like with a keto diet, I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna cut into the carb piece of this, and I'm gonna put more cookies or eggs into the basket of fat and take less from the carb basket. So I'm redistributing how I spend those calories. And so when I do more, the problem with that, if you don't have a gallbladder, is this is hard to digest, this fat. So I'm cutting, because protein stays pretty consistent at around 25% of your calories, because if you eat a bunch more protein, your kidneys just can't break it down. So that's a pretty fixed number. People go a little lower protein and they're maybe 20% protein, and maybe they're up to 30 or even 35% protein if they're a bodybuilder or something like that, and that might be appropriate. But you get much higher than that, and your kidneys have to excrete all that extra protein because you can't absorb it, and that's not good for your body. So what you do on a keto diet is you're almost no carbs. It's like 5 to 10% carbs, and then you're 70-80% fat in your diet. So that's the problem with the keto diet, and why I see a lot of people, if you've had your gallbladder removed and you don't know that, hey, I need to be on some bile salts and probably even some digestive enzymes that contain lipase, which is the enzyme that breaks down fat, I'm not going to feel good on the keto diet. So I do have people that are able to do it. They just need to know that about what are they trying to do, what's their body been through, and then they can work with it to find a solution. Because a lower carb diet is a good solution for a lot of people, especially if they're struggling with blood sugar imbalances and they're trying to level out and support good blood sugar handling. So I think that is that was all the questions that I got. So thanks for people that sent in questions to me this week for this. I think that made it go a little better. I don't know if I've got any in the comments to answer, but it doesn't look like it. So if you're watching this and you're catching the replay and you have a question, just post it in the comments for that, and I'll try to circle back when I see the question and answer it as soon as I get a chance. So thanks for watching. If you have any topics that you want to see in the future, just reach out to me and let me know, because I'm always looking for things that are interesting to you. And I wanted to talk about the gallbladder because most of the time it's an afterthought and we wait until it needs to be yanked out. But I don't believe God put a lot of extra superfluous organs in our body. I believe each one has a role and a purpose. So the longer we can keep all those organs, the better, in my opinion. So thanks for watching and have a great day.